right. Thank you, Dr. Alexander, Chancellor Hager. Man, it's my pleasure to be here today. You know, when Ross called me to come speak, and I know I'm supposed to call him Dr. Alexander, but has anybody here seen the picture of him when he's 20 years old with this just epic mullet? When you see that picture, you can't unsee it, and it makes it really hard to call him a doctor. So Ross calls me. He says, "Hey, I'm in a little bit of a bind. I blew my entire commencement speaker budget on this football stadium out here. Could you come speak?" And I said, "Well, I mean, tell me about the gig." Yeah. He said, "I promise, it's an amazing gig. You get paid nothing. You have to wear a Britney Spears mic and a dress." And I said, "Stop there." I said, "This sounds perfect. I'm in." So here we are, class of 2026. Congratulations. It's my honor to be here talking to you today. As Ross mentioned, I mean, there's so many things about this class that are special. So many people who are the first in their family to graduate. So many people who started education a long time ago and came back and finished it here. However you did it, wherever you came from, it's impressive. I know it took hard work. It took dedication. You should be proud. Now, when you give a commencement speech, what they don't tell you is that there's no topic. You kind of have to figure it out on your own. So where do you start? And I did what a lot of you maybe did. Don't tell your teachers or faculty. I went to AI and I said, "What makes a great commencement speech?" And it was pretty good, actually. It said, "Old person tells young people advice they didn't ask for." And I thought, I'm going to crush this. This is what I am the best at. I mean, if you ask my daughters, you ask my wife, you ask the people at work, I do that all the time. So, because you didn't ask, here's some advice. Over the next 5 years, you know what, nobody told me this. Over the next 5 years, the decisions you make will be foundational. What do I mean by that? I mean, you've got some big, big things to decide. Where are you going to live? You're going to stay here? You're going to move back home? Maybe go somewhere you've never been before. What kind of job are you going to take? You're going to take a safe job, or maybe the risky one with a bunch of upside? You're going to get married? You're going to have kids? You're going to buy a house, rent a house, start saving, open a 401k? What's a 401k? I still don't know. I have no idea. But what I can tell you is every one of those decisions will change the trajectory of your life. But here's the problem, and here's what nobody told me. Human beings, when faced with lots of decisions, make worse decisions. There's actually a name for this. It's called decision fatigue. And Steve Jobs, famously, he wore the same black turtleneck every day so he didn't have to decide what to wear. Michael Phelps, he ate the same breakfast before every race. And the challenge there is that when you want to make less decisions, how you do it is kind of unproven. But there have been some scientific studies around this. And there's only one way to make better decisions, and that's to make fewer. But I just told you you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. So what do you do? Well, there's a tool that I want to give you today, and it's called Decide Once. And it's the idea that if you can find one decision that makes 100 other decisions easier or go away, that's what you need to lean into. And I'm going to give you an example. So researchers were studying people who are trying to be healthy. Being healthy is really hard. Every time you go to eat something, you have to decide, am I going to be healthy or not? Is this something I should eat or not? And so they gave them a little tool. They said, before you eat, just say, "I am healthy. I eat healthy." People who did that were 66% more successful than those who didn't. Same thing happens with smokers. If you say, "I'm trying to stop smoking," those people relapse significantly more than people who say, "I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke." Now, why is that? I mean, it's just a small turn of phrase. Why would that be so high impact? And it's because one is a bunch of decisions that you have to make over and over. And the other is a decision that you make a part of your identity. All right, quick show of hands, real quick. Don't think about it. Who here had to decide if they were going to brush their teeth this morning? Come on, somebody's in. I know one of you had to, right? Most people don't, because at some point in your life, you just decided you're the type of person who brushes their teeth, right? It became part of your identity. And when something becomes part of your identity, it takes all of those decisions that you have to make after, and it makes them easier, or even better, it removes them. And so in my life, there's been 3 decisions that I made that did that for me. Made everything easier, changed my career, eventually it changed my life. And I want to tell you about those. So the first one is decide once to raise your hand. So early in my career, I was working at this advertising agency. My boss comes in and he says, our biggest client has this new project. It's called mobile marketing. If anybody wants to work on it, come see me after. And my hand just went up like this. And he looked at me like I was an idiot. So I put it down really quick. But after, I went up and I said, I'd love to work on that project. I don't know what mobile marketing is, but that's it. And I didn't think about it. 3 days later, he comes up to my desk and he says, do you know how many people volunteered for that project? I have no idea. He said, 0, just you. So congratulations. You're the head of mobile marketing for American Airlines. You're also the head of mobile marketing for every client we have. Good luck. Don't mess this up. 6 months later, the iPhone comes out. Mobile becomes the biggest shift maybe in the history of business. And somehow, I was out on the forefront. I don't know how. I don't know why. But when I tell that story, I always talk about that as like the moment that changed my life, when I raised my hand. But what I realized is it wasn't that moment. It was what happened after. Because I raised my hand, I got some more responsibility, I got more opportunity, and so then I just did it again. And then I did it again. But when I looked around, I just kept waiting for somebody else to also raise their hand. And every once in a while, somebody did. But what surprised me is that most of the time, people didn't. And so I just kept doing it. And eventually, it became not a decision, it became a part of who I am. It became my identity. I was the type of person who raised my hand. And that decision, that single decision, when I look back at every opportunity I've had over the last 20 years, I think I can point back to that. And I don't know what would have happened if I didn't raise my hand that first time. But what's cool is you've got some old dude up here giving you advice that you didn't ask for. So here is the advice. Decide once today that you're going to raise your hand. Here's what it's going to look like. Your boss is going to come up to you on Friday. He's going to say, I got this big presentation. I need some help with it. And everyone's going to look at each other, and they're going to just put their hands in their pockets. And hopefully, you're not going to do that. You're going to say, I raise my hand. And I can tell you, if you do this, this is the single thing that will accelerate your career the fastest. It's a tip, it's a trick, it's a tool. Do it. Decide once to be the type of person that raises their hand. All right, decision number 2, be an expert. Fast forward 2 years. I got hired away to this huge company, 180,000 people, and I am the head of mobile. What does that mean? It just means I'm the youngest guy. That's all it is, nothing fancy. And so we're in a cab on the way to our biggest new business pitch of the year. And I did say cab. You remember when we had cabs? That's not a thing anymore. So I'm in the cab, and there's actually an argument between the senior people on my team about whether I was old enough to go to this meeting in front of me, which is pretty harsh, right? And they say, well, fine, you can go, but you have 2 minutes. Do not go over 2 minutes. I said, all right, so I go up and I do my presentation, 1 minute and 50 seconds. I tell them why they should build a mobile app. I go to sit down. Everything's great. And then the CEO of the company that we're talking to says, hold on, wait, hold on. I want to hear more about what this guy's talking about. But come back up here. And he brings me back up, and he asks me questions for 45 minutes, the whole rest of the meeting. And I'm thinking, I'm in so much trouble after this is over. And then he gets up, and he's about to walk out, and he goes, you know what? We should do this. Well, let's move forward. I'm going to call you on Tuesday. We'll get all the paperwork done, and we'll make it happen. And he walks out. And everybody in that room looks at me and goes, what just happened? And at that moment, what had happened is that my age stopped mattering. My experience stopped mattering. The only thing that mattered was that I was an expert. I knew just a little bit more about something than everybody else in that room. And that was the last time that anybody questioned whether I was old enough or should be in that room. Now, here's what's cool. I'm not the smartest guy. I'm definitely not the smartest guy on this stage or the smartest guy in this room. But I built a whole career around being an expert. And it's not hard. It really isn't. It just takes a little grit. Being an expert means you know more than 95% of the people, not 100% of the people. And that just means that you put in the hard work, the effort. And in today's world, oh man, with AI, you don't need 20 years of experience. You don't need a wall of degrees. You don't need certifications. All you need is you need to work a little bit harder and understand it a little bit better. And you know who's going to win? It's not going to be old dudes like me. It's going to be folks like you who can find a tool that their boss doesn't even know exists. You're going to be able to get up to speed on something in a week that took us years to do. But it's not optional. I'll tell you that. being an expert in an AI-driven world, it's going to be a requirement. There's not going to be a lot of room for generalists. So decide once today. Whatever you do, I don't care what it is, don't do it unless you can become an expert. Decide to be an expert. All right, the last one, and this one's the most important. So fast forward another 17 years, I just sold my company. I felt, I was kind of on top of the world. I felt probably a little too proud of myself. And I was sitting on my couch with my wife, and she says, we should talk. And if anybody's married in here, you know what that means. There's two types of conversations like this. There's, we need to talk, 100% you're in the doghouse, right? There's, we should talk, 90% chance you're in the doghouse, but there's like a 10% chance that she's going to tell you how awesome you are. So she starts off, she says, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you've done for our family, the hard work, the late nights. And I'm thinking, all right, I nailed this, 10%, right? And then she says, but. When I married you, I married someone kind, I married someone thoughtful, I married someone who put others first, and you are so wrapped up in what you're doing right now that that's not you. You're not acting that way now. You make kindness something that you do when it's convenient. What do you do with that, right? So I did what any kind, thoughtful person would do. And I told her how absolutely wrong she was. And when I argued with my wife, I like to do things. I had this thing I do where I give her a case study, right? And I said, I am kind and I am thoughtful. In fact, last week it was my assistant's birthday and I sent her flowers. What do you think about that, huh? It's pretty kind, pretty thoughtful. And she said, did you send her flowers or did you ask her to send herself flowers? And I said, that was a bad example. And I stormed out and I got mad and I sat there and I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought about it. And you know what? She was right again. She's right every single time. Every single time. And what I realized is that kindness had stopped being part of my identity. It had stopped being something that I prioritized. And while I was busy and I was stressed and I was frustrated, kindness was the first thing to go. And then when I thought about the kind of life I wanted to live and the people that I admire the most, just kept coming up the most kind people. I have 3 friends, Willie Powers, Rob Howard, John Fott. These guys never make kindness a decision. It's just part of who they are. It's ingrained in their identity. So that day I decided I am a kind person. Not when it's easy, not when other people are looking, but always. And am I perfect? Absolutely not. But I can tell you that was the single best decision that I've ever made in my entire life. So, if you forget everything else I say today, you all are going to make a million decisions. You can decide to raise your hand. You can decide to be an expert. Both of those will change your career. You should do that. But underneath every decision you make is something even more important. And that's how you treat people. Now, truly kind people, people who put others first consistently, whether anybody's watching or not, they stand out. People seek them out. People want to help them because they help others. Raising your hand, it's going to create a ton of opportunity. Becoming an expert, it'll make you wildly successful. I promise you that. But honestly, being kind, that is going to be the thing that gets you the furthest. So to the class of 2026, congratulations. You guys have accomplished something amazing. You got a lot of big decisions coming up over the next 5 years. Decide today who you want to be. Decide once. Thank you, and soar Eagles.